ॐ सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां वक्रतुण्डमहाकाय सूर्यकोटिसमप्रभा निर्विघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा सरस्वती नमस्तुभ्यं वरदे कामरूपिणी विद्यारम्भं करिष्यामि सिद्धिर्भवतु मे सदा ॐ गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः. Good evening. So let's just recap what we covered in the last session. So we are talking about Hinduism as a way of life. So when we say way of life, we typically mean certain cultural aspects, certain attitudes, certain relationship with things around us, people around us, how we look at them and how we deal with things of our life, right? That is what is called way of life. Way of life doesn't have to do anything with the religion. Religions can just be certain beliefs, and holding on to that belief could be religion. Whereas a way of life goes beyond religion, and sometimes it can be not even connected to religion. In the case of few religions like Buddhism, Hinduism and all that, we see them very connected to lot of things that we do in life. That is why the phrase way of life is used. And towards this I gave some examples. If we have to quickly look at those examples, I spoke about how a dancer prostrates to the stage before she starts dancing because she thinks it is not correct to kick the floor, and she seeks the pardon because she is going to start dancing. Similarly, you will find similar behavior when a farmer starts to plow the field. The person prays to the ground that I am going to tear you, please pardon me. Similarly, when somebody, in Bali, Indonesia, wants to cut the tree or branch of a tree, he or she typically prays to the tree. This is all in our custom. And few other examples I spoke about, the 5 elements like the earth, water, air, fire. All these are worshipped. Even a big mountain, rivers are worshipped, the trees are worshipped, animals are worshipped, even like limbs of animals are worshipped. All those we saw, even snake is worshipped. So these are things we said are very unique to our culture. And this is also religious. That's why I wanted to bring all those to give a background of why our way of life is intertwined with our religion. I'll call it as religion now, but later on we also want to look at some of these names because there is a lot of Western views of religion, God and all that. But for now, let's just use the term religion. Okay. And then some of the other things we said that we typically worship are children, the adults, money, books, everything, right? Even the nomads, the diseases, plants, then all the things like buses and electronic goods, everything we worship. Then I spoke a little bit about the weapons, then even a turmeric, then a lump of clay. A lot of you would have seen that today during the Ganesh Chaturthi also. So all that we saw, even the death is worshipped. And one thing that I also spoke about is all this is linked to a central vision. I'm just quickly recapping. So we will cover a lot of these during today in terms of bit more detail. But all these are anything that you see all the way from planets. I mean, we spoke about small things, but even huge planets like Sun and Saturn and Jupiter, stars, death, everything is looked upon differently in our culture, right? We have an attitude towards them. Okay. And what is that very unique is what we were seeing. Now I want to summarize this, even though I say recap, we didn't see this slide last week, but I put this together. Okay. So we don't worship idols. There is a typical saying that Hindus are idol worshippers, is how Western countries look at us. But we don't worship idols. We worship only altars. Altars are some representations. I'll show you something. Okay. I'll come back to that slide, but just look at this slide. What you see here is different forms of greeting. The first one you see is how Chinese greet each other, right? They do this. Then the Arabs, see how they greet each other. And you see the third picture where somebody is prostrating. It's not Indian or Hindu, it is Nigerian. The way they actually, this is a form of greeting elders in Nigeria. And then you see a Christian, couple of Christian or three of them are, prayer halls, right? Churches. So this is they also have an altar of worship. It's not that they don't have, right? The cross is an altar of worship. So you see that Mary, somebody is kneeling down. So these are forms. So you can't avoid forms in the way you greet people or the way you actually try to relate even to gods. Even some of the religions which say forms are, God has no form, even they have certain altars, right? That's why they go to a specific place, go around the Kaaba and all that. Similarly, you see the Jewish on the left bottom of the screen. So they also have, everything is a form, right? The wall that they go and prostrate to, it's a form. And some of the Arabic religions, like Yazidis, they are very similar to Hinduism. They see the way they go and pray. It's like a temple, they just go and pray there. That is also a form. And then you see Japanese, how they treat each other. And the right bottom is the African way of worshipping. So there are forms and there are altars in almost every culture in the world because the life is full of forms. I told you the other day that we shake hands, we hug, all these are forms. So whenever we have to relate, you can't avoid forms. Okay. So an altar of worship or a form of worship or form of greeting is unavoidable. However, in a Hindu culture, we don't see a particular form as God. Okay, this God is is always understood as some person, right? Because most of us, we know of religions talking about God, and God is usually understood as somebody like our grandfather who is sitting in heaven and who is always monitoring us. That's how we understood God. And God, there is good and bad. So there is a Satan and God. So the Satan creates bad things in us and God creates good things. Like that is most of the religions talk like that, right? We don't look upon God as somebody sitting in some place. Because if God is the creator, suppose you assume a God means God has to create this world. He or she should have created the world. So where did the God go and get material for this creation? Right? And that material, if it was outside, then who created that material? And if God had a body, who created his body? All those questions will come. Therefore, when we talk about creation, the creation is seen as not separate from God. How it is, we will see later. But the basic vision is that God manifests as the world. Okay. So this is the basic vision. I also spoke a little bit about it in the last session, that the central vision of our dharma or the religion is that there is only God. We don't say there is one God. We also don't say there are many gods. What we say is all that is here is God and nothing else. Therefore, any name and form is valid to invoke the God. Okay? We don't, that is why 33 crores of gods are acceptable. In fact, any Western God comes to India also, we keep this picture in our prayer hall. We don't have a problem. In fact, most of us visit churches, mosques. We don't have a problem because having one more God is not a big thing for us. Why? Because every name and form is a valid way to invoke the God. That is one of the basic premise. Now, there were some questions last week. If that is the case, why is Hinduism also having all these different gods? Right? We also say Shiva, we also say Vishnu, we also say Subramanya, Ganesha, all that. So these are specific forms which also have certain characteristics, attributes that are given along with these. These are like brands. Like when you say boost, what does it ring? What it rings? What bell rings in your mind when I say boost? What goes in your mind immediately? The phrase "secret of my energy," right? Why? Because before boost came, there was no energy drink in India. Okay, so somebody thought always these drinks are spoken about, as nutrients, all that. Nobody has spoken about an energy drink. So they created a brand called Boost, and then the brand is the Boost is an energy drink. That's why the advertisement was always "secret of my energy." All the cricketers will come and do that because your mind associates energy with Boost. That is called branding for children who don't understand this, right? That's why I'm explaining. Now, each of these, so when everything is God, so you can't, any one form can be used to invoke the God, that is fine. But the all pervasiveness of the God also has to be given a form. Correct? If whatever is the nature of the God, if we say God is all pervasive, you need certain forms which creates that brand of all pervasiveness. That is important. Like when you say boost, I remember energy. Like that, when I see this form, I should be able to relate to somebody who is all pervasive. Okay, I should not look at that as a one person. Initially, I might look at that as one person, but once I grow, I should be able to recognize that it is not one person, but it is the all pervasiveness which is there depicted in that form. Correct? So those kind of forms were given to us by our great rishis and munis who were one of the earliest followers of this dharma. I will show you some examples. Okay. Before that, I want to bring few things to your mind. Okay. Why are we even talking about religion here? Right? Why do you need religions? Right? Way of life or whatever doesn't matter. Let's just think of it. Right? Religions have led to so much of fight. People have been fighting, killing each other in the name of religion. Right? So one of the things that every one of us at some point in life will be thinking, why do you even need a religion, right? Before answering that question, let's look at this. What do we need in life? Every one of us want to be happy, right? That is the basic thing. So what are we searching? I want to find a pleased I. Happy me is what I want. And few things invariably makes people happy, right? You see the first one on the left. I think many of you will recognize this, right? It is a eureka moment. When somebody realizes, suppose you are solving a very tough mathematics problem, right? And the answer is evading you for a long time. After some 4 hours of thinking, you get the answer. Then what happens? You get a happiness, right? Called Vidyananda. This is what we call as Vidyan. That is what happened when Archimedes, discovered some scientific truth, right? Or a Newton discovered the law of gravity. Then that happiness. So that is number one. That's the first picture. So when you come in touch with the reality, or when you recognize a reality or a truth or an answer to a problem, you have what we nowadays call as eureka moment. That is one way that you are pleased. Second, you look at the other two pictures, right? Nature always invokes a pleased eye. That's why we go to Ooty, Kodaikanal, or Switzerland, all these places. Why? Because I have no agenda for how the nature has to be. I am very happy looking at nature because I am a pleased self when I look at nature, right? The third picture is deep sleep. I am always happy when I am sleeping. Every day I love to go to sleep, right? All of us. And finally, people at large, when there is a big crowd cheering something, right? You are always happy. Again, there are certain other scenarios when all of us are happy. When there is compassion, benevolence, kindness. When you see a child being happy, you are happy. When you see an elderly person enjoying, you are happy, right? It's got nothing to do with just this picture makes you happy. Why? Because whenever I'm in touch with the total or whole, I experience a joy, right? So what is it about the total? Whenever I am discovering a scientific fact, I am in touch with total because it's a universal fact, right? So when there is a universal fact discovered, I am in touch with an order, a reality. I am happy, right? An idea strikes, I am happy. Nature, again, it's a whole, right? I am happy. People at large, it's a whole, right? I am happy. Similarly, deep sleep. Why? Because all the individuality is gone during deep sleep. Or a compassion, it's a universal quality, right? It has nothing to do with one individual. It's a compassion and benevolence are universal qualities. So that means whenever I come in touch with the total or whole, I always experience a joy. So it shows something about what a whole is. That's why the central vision is about the whole or total because you are always part of the whole, right? And when we talk about whole, there are many things there. So that is why we talk about an order, physical total. We call it as samashti in Sanskrit. There is a vyashti, there is a samashti, an individual, and there is a total, right? This physical body is made up of food. There is a big food chain, right? Every physical body is made up of food, right? There is a samashti, there is a vyashti. What is food? Anything edible, right? So whether it is vegetarian or not, I'm not going into all that. But irrespective, the basic food always comes from plants, and then you have different stages of food cycle, food chain that you have studied. All of you know about it, right? Now, where I'm headed is there is an individual body, physical body, and then there is a total physical body. Then there is an individual breathing, and then there is a total which is called the air circulation, right? So there is an individual and total. So that is so our entire way of life vision is centered around how the individual relates to the total. It's very important. We need to understand where our context is. That is why I covered this in the last session. The vision of our Dharma, Hindu religion as it is called now, is that all that is here is one total, only God. It's called only God because it's not so. Now the question will come, right? A lot of you will ask, hey, you can say only God, but God needs to be a conscious person. You can't say this wall. Wall is an inert thing, right? This cloth is an inert thing. So you can't say all these together can be a God. How can there can be only God? Is God is inert or is it a conscious? Right? So that is a very important question. Right? Now that is where the teaching comes in terms of why we say there is only God. How is it that all that is here is God? Is a question that is covered in the teaching, right? But before I know this, so that's why last time I spoke about difference between preaching and teaching, right? If the religion is only talking about you should do good things, you should not steal, you should not hurt others. If it is code of conduct, like 10 commandments, means do's and don'ts, right? If it is about do's and don'ts, if that is what religion has to tell, then you can preach. Hey, if you do it, then God will beat you, right? Now, most of these do's and don'ts we already know. We don't have God to come and tell that I should not steal others' pencil. As a child, you know. Why? Because your pencil you don't want others to steal. So you should not steal others' pencil. You will know. Because any intelligent person is given the capacity to know what is to be done and not to be done. Because they know what hurts them, they should not hurt others. This is value system. So value system need not be necessarily be preached fully by religions. It can add a little bit. That is okay. So what has to be taught is things that you are not generally able to understand, recognize. If that is something which is useful, beneficial to you, then a religion can come and show you that, right? Now that is where the teaching comes into play. Here the vision is all that is here is only God. Now that is not a matter of belief, because a matter of belief is only about things which are away from you, not which includes you, correct? If I say your name is not Ramesh, but it is Edward, then you would want to know why it is so, because it is connected directly to you, right? It's not if I tell the headmaster of some St. John's school in Andaman is so and so, then you may believe it, disbelieve it. But if it is about you, it is not a matter of faith or belief. It is a matter for knowledge. You should immediately ask the question, how come I don't know that? Or if you say everything is God, then what is that God? You will not ask the question, who is that God? Who is that God? You will ask only if I tell you that he sits in heaven. Right? When in southern India you have this atheists, most of these, even all over India you have, right? Most of the states. The atheists say there is no God. But you have to then ask, when you say there is no God, what is it that you understand as God? That is a question you should ask. Invariably, that person is thinking, when he or she says there is no God, that person is thinking of somebody sitting in heaven, correct? Then only that person, so some notion of God has to be there. That he is like Ganesha, or he is some looking like a man sitting in heaven. So some notion has to be there for you to dismiss it. Otherwise, how will you say God does not exist? Because for you to even say God does not exist, you should have first a concept of what is God. And that concept is what he is questioning, he or she, right? He's not questioning God. He is questioning his own concept of God. You have to understand that. And Whatever is that concept that he or she is dismissing, we also dismiss that God. Okay, so we are in that aspect, we agree with atheists. That's why most of the atheists anyway we consider as Hindu only. Because at the root, we both are saying the same thing. We also say that that kind of a God is not possible. And they also say that kind of God does not exist. But then the question should not be who is God? The question should be what is God? Correct? Because it is omnipresent. It is not one person. Now, the what does not mean it is inert. That's also you need to remember. Now, we will go to, I think we don't want to get stuck with God. Now, when we say there is a vision, where is this vision coming from? There should be some central book. Most of the religions have some central source which is giving them the vision. God sits in heaven also comes from some book, right? But Hinduism, we don't know if there is any such central book. Most of us don't know. So the central vision is from what we call as Veda. Veda means with, means to know. So the book of knowledge is Veda, that's all. So Vedas are typically, it doesn't even talk about God. If you see, that's why most of the Westerners get confused when they see Veda. It doesn't say Shiva, Vishnu. I mean, there is a word Shiva, but in a different context. But it doesn't say somebody sitting in Himalayas like that. It doesn't talk. We typically think like in other religious books they talk about God, right? Our Vedas don't explicitly talk about all these individual named gods. It talks about Varna, Mitra, and all these devatas. I'll cover a little bit about devatas today. So that's why they think all these devatas are Hindu gods. That's why they said 33 crore gods are there in Hinduism. Okay. Now these Vedas only talk about truths, things which I cannot generally know through my other means of knowing is what is covered in Veda. And Veda is just a book of knowledge. It is not a dogma or do's and don'ts or anything like that. It just says you do this kind of a ritual, you will get rain. That's all it says. Those kind of things is what it says. And it is up to you. If you follow that, you will get rain. You may or may not, depending on how well you do that, right? So those are rituals and some things it speaks about. But there are also certain portions of Veda which talks about the reality of this only God. Okay. So Veda, here we will see all the subsequent talks. But what you need to know is the central text which gives this vision is Veda, right? Now, beyond, can somebody go on mute?
ఇక్కడ చెన్నైలో ఉంది, అక్కడంతా కూడా ఉంది. శ్రీదేవి దానికి
Okay. Now, this only God, I said, needs certain forms. Like every religion has. So, even though if I say only God, I still need to relate, right? I can't say everything is God. Then you also need to relate to that God. I see. I continue to use God. God, like I said, God has different connotations because we all. The moment I say use the word God, you will immediately think of a person sitting somewhere. Okay, take that out of your mind. Okay, we are not talking about a person. We are talking about a conscious, omnipresent God, right? When you ask any tribal man also, or go to any remote place in any part of this country or countries where there is Hindu culture there, you go and ask where is God, they'll say God is everywhere. Whether they understand or not, they'll say God, where is God? They'll say God is everywhere, right? So that everywhere God is what we are talking about. But still we need certain forms to show that there is only God, right? Which represents that only God. Is there a name? How can you give one name for a omnipresent God? So if I say Rama, Krishna, it still means only one particular form, right? But can I give a name which represents a only God, that omnipresent God? So if I have to say everything is God, then I should include all the names in that one name, correct? So this table is also God, wall is God, sun is God, sky is God, everything is God, suppose I say, then I should have one word which should stand for all the words which are there, whether it is already spoken or yet to be spoken. Every kind of word should be included in that one name. Is there a possibility of such a name, right? Now, when I have to include every word, that means what? The moment I include every letter, then I would have included every word. Once I have included every word, I would have included every name, correct? That means I need to include every letter, every syllable in that one name. So if I have to include every syllable, then I need to include every sound. The moment I have included every sound in one name, then I would have included every letter and syllable and every word and thereby every object. If every sound has to be in one word, when I open my mouth without moving my tongue, anything, what sound comes? Just make a sound. All of you open your mouth and make a sound. What sound comes? Ah is the first sound, right? Then you have to move your tongue, you have to touch your teeth. Then other sounds like pa, ga, ma, all that you have to move your lips and tongue. If you just open your throat and make a sound, the only sound which will come is ah. The moment you close your mouth, the only sound that comes is ma, right? Is the sound that comes. So all the sounds are in between ah and right? So the moment I say the sounds in between ah and that means I have covered every sound, I have covered every syllable, I have covered every word, I have covered every object. So that ah and whatever is in between is represented by u, which is ubayor madhye. In between ah sound and sound, whatever exists is u. Now when I say ah, u, that is in Sanskrit, we combine them, it is om. Within om, everything is already included. So it is a sound so there are other things of om. It's not, please don't think that I have simplified om or anything like that. There are multiple things which are spoken about om in Upanishads and all that, but this is the basic thing. It is a sound symbol for an omnipresent God. It is arrived at as a sound symbol because it stands for every object that is conceived yet to be conceived. Okay. Now, is there an altar for omnipresent God? This only God I am talking about as omnipresent God. Again, there are multiple forms and shapes, right? Every forms and shape in your mind, think in your mind, I am going to pull a heap of all that is here, right? You can't put it physically, but in your mind, if you can heap everything together at one place, this is how the shape will come up. This is how the shape will be, right? Now, that is an altar to show all that is here. That is the only God altar. Again, I'll give you a few more. So, this is Rupa Rupam, right? This is like aggregating everything, but you have to be a little bit more specific. I spoke to you the other day about this is Dakshinamurti. Okay. See how this Dakshinamurti is. First, the normal impression is this is some person sitting, correct? But we said the God is not one person sitting somewhere. The God is omnipresent. The sky is God, the sun, moon is Lord, and the 5 elements we spoke about, like earth, water, fire, air, space, all the 5 which makes up this whole world, we said is God. So if this altar shows all of that, then we can pray, right? Because it has already included everything which is here. Let's see how 5 elements are actually shown here. Earth is very easy, right? Earth is a very tangible thing. So this whole sculpture, the altar is made up of earth. So it is easily shown. Then water. Water is easily shown again because it has a form. The Ganges on the top of the head is actually depicting the water, right? That is also can be shown. The third thing which is easily shown is the fire. You can see in the hand of the god there is fire, right? So these three elements, because they have a form, they can be shown. How do you show air? Air doesn't have a, you can't see air, right? So how can you show that in a sculpture? So that's why if you see this head of this Dakshinamurti, this is Dakshinamurti, okay, for those of you who can't recognize. If you see the hair, you see that band? In every altar, you will see a band in the head. Why is it used? Because you don't want the hair to fly in the wind. So by implication, it shows the presence of wind. Again, the last one that doesn't have a form is space. How do you show space? Space cannot be shown by a bandana and all that, right? The only way to show the space is by enclosing it. Unless you enclose, you can't show space. So the Damaru in the hand actually shows an enclosure. So you have shown 5 elements now. There are other things which are typically shown in this. Is the God man or woman? So is it a father in heaven or mother in heaven, right? So we don't say God is a man nor a woman. In fact, we talk about Abhinna Nimitta Upadana Karanam, both the material and the maker, both of them are God. Therefore, he is Ardhanarishvara. So you see on the left ear, the earring is a woman's earring and the right ear is the man's earring. In every sculpture, you can see that. That means is both the mother and the father at the same time. Matribhuteshwara is what is called. So now that is shown. Now there are also other spiritual practices and things which are shown in this sculpture. We will see a lot of those later, but quickly I will cover a few things, right? There is, he sits on this banyan tree, which actually is Vatavriksha. It shows the tradition, the teaching tradition goes from teacher to student like that. So there are meanings for a lot of those things, like snake has a meaning. I spoke about snake worship, right, last week. Snake is, you will find that snake is there in almost every altar, whether it is Shiva or Shakti or Mahavishnu or Skanda or Vigneshwara. Everybody has a snake. Why? Because snake represents energy, Shakti. Why? Because it doesn't have any feet. It doesn't have limbs, right? But it is the fastest mover. That means it is a representation of that energy. Therefore, the Shakti is represented by showing snake in every altar. So now, okay, let me come to why I was talking about it, right? An altar, now if you see, has a meaning more than a person there. While you can relate to that person as God, that I'm not stopping that, right? If you want to relate to Ishvara as a person, as a father, that is fine. We are not talking, but at some point, when someone needs to understand what is this God, the same altar also makes you understand that, right? So this is one altar of only God I spoke about, right? Now, there is a book called Tao of Physics, which talks about this Shiva's cosmic dance. You know, we all would have seen Nataraja, right? Again, there also these 5 elements are shown in the body, but more importantly, that whole dance is about how this galaxy is as an energetic, lively entity, right? See, everything is moving in this set of galaxies, right? Whether it is the sun or the earth or moon or any planet, either they are rotating or moving around. So the whole thing is a moving mass, and each one is moving in its own direction, right? And they don't collide with each other very often. And this earth has to be in a certain distance away from sun, otherwise life can't exist, and it has to rotate around itself, right? All these are essential and they have to continuously happen, otherwise the life cannot be sustained. And these are not some small motorbike running or anything, right? These are huge galactic things which are happening, and these can't just happen, without any intelligence doing it, right? That whole system is what is depicted as Ishvara. So these are why I am talking about all this is when we talk about way of life, we have to understand how we look upon the whole, right? The total. It is seen as one conscious order which is making things happen, right? And that is God. It can't be some person sitting in one of those planets called heaven, right? And that person can't create this. That's why you have to understand what is Ishvara. Okay. Then one last thing before a couple of things, right? This only God thing, I'll cover that and then we'll go into next things, right? So another thing is this Vibhuti. You would have, most of you know about it, right? Why Vibhuti? Right? So if everything is God, if you need some substance which depicts it, we generally look at Vibhuti because when everything burns, it burns into a black ash, right? And when black ash burns into a gray and then it becomes a white ash, and that white ash, you keep burning it, it remains the same color, right? Which means it's in a way representing the substratum of all that is here, right? So that is another thing. And finally, you would have heard about Rudram, Namakam and all that. So even there, because is it, so when I told that the vision, Veda talks about everything as God, right? See, if you see what all is prayed to, what is the God? What is, it says, it lists everything, right? From a charioteer to pharmacist, to a head thief, to head dacoit, person who is sitting or rested or sleeping or awakened, or horses, or carpenters, everything is you, is how it is spoken, right? In terms of people. Okay. Now a few other things, right? Itihasas. So are we saying that there is only vision, or are the stories also around the same idea of all that is here is God? Okay. What is this picture? This is the typical picture you will find of Vishwarupa Darshan. Of people who have read Mahabharata, Sri Krishna shows Vishwarupa at multiple places, right? And what is shown there? He shows that everything is him, right? That is what is Vishwarupa. It's not like he is shown all this head. What he showed Arjuna is all that is here is me and nothing else, right? It's a figurative way to show that everything is God. So the Itihasa tries to show that God is not this one person who is running this chariot for Arjuna, but he is somebody who is omnipresent, right? And you have heard, you would have, many of you anyway, almost all of you will know this story of Hiranyakashipu, right? The Prahalada story. What is the story there? He says, he asks, where is God, right? And then the answer he gives is, he is there everywhere, right? In the pillar and in the dust. And then the Lord comes. So the story has other things, but what is the basic crux of it is the God is omnipresent, and it is figuratively spoken about this way, right? And Vamana, it's again the same thing, right? The God is beyond just this earth, right? He transcends the earth and the space, is what is shown, right? And few other things. This blue color, why is God, most of the gods blue in color, right? Blue represents all pervasiveness because the sky is blue, the ocean is blue, right? That's why Vyapnoti iti Vishnu. When we say Vishnu, we are not talking about just one person. The one who pervades everything is called Vishnu, right? Similarly, Shiva's neck is shown as blue because he is beyond this creation, right? That's why he is actually Spatika in his color, but then a part of him is this blue. That means the whole creation is only one part of what is the Lord, but he is much beyond all this, right? So again, these are all to show that omnipresence of God. Now, okay, the omnipresence is the central vision that we understood, right? And the Itihasas and other things speak about it. But coming to way of life, one is way of life is related to how we relate to things, how we look upon the world. That is one aspect. But again, culture, right? Culture is another element which is linked to this. Then we talk about samskaras, right? The whole life has about 40 rituals for all of people who are born in Hindu religion, right? And these rituals also take one through the same thing. Everything is seen. That's why I was saying it's not about omnipresence of God alone, but everything which is spun around that, right? Which is the way we look at things. the way we do things in life, right? Whether it is the wedding or a childbirth or my going for a recreation tour or my old age, all these, even the antyeshti, right? The death also is seen as Lord, is what I spoke. Now, this is in a very structured way during the phases of our life. We have what is called as samskara, the rituals or purifications, which takes us through our life. Because see, the life has to have some meaning, right? It's not that we are born here for nothing, right? Not to just just be here, you know, give birth to more children and then go away, right? Beyond that, there should be some meaning in life, because everybody, other than earning money and living, we should all, there should be some purpose in life, and that purpose has to be linked to the total that I spoke about, right? So what is it in the big scheme of things? What is the meaning of my existence? And that is something that all of us at some point in life will have to start thinking about. Whether we want it or not, we will all think about it, right? Either and some people think about it in young age, some during middle age, or some at later part of life. But there is a natural question: why, what are we doing here? Why are we born? Right? And see, there were thousands of years when we didn't exist, as though, I mean, whether we existed or not, we don't know. Some religions say we did, some say we didn't. Doesn't matter. But at least there has been 2000 odd years from the time AD started, right? So we don't know, and we are there for some period of time, and then we know that there will be a time when we won't exist. So what is happening here is a question. What is that? So I saw some questions last week. What happens after death? But after death, let's leave. What is the reality of the present moment? Who am I? Right? Am I this body, or is there a meaning for me? I think those kind of questions at some point people, all of us, will have, right? We need answers. And that is why most of these religions try to address that, because the biggest mystery we all have is we don't know where we came from, where we are going, what are we doing, right? And that is something, that is what this religion tries to address. But that is centered around the central vision I spoke about. And if everything is God, then what is that God? All that is also spun around the culture of our society and what we do to us as an individual. That is where all these samskaras come into play. Whether it is, you know, the studies that we do or the lifestyle that we take up, all of that is spun around this big question of what is life, right? And in all those samskaras that I spoke about, there is one invariable thing, that we always connect ourselves to the total. We start any of those things by what we call as sankalpa, right? Shubhe shobhane muhurte adya brahmanaha, like that we say. Svetavaraha kalpe, Vaivasvata manvantre, Kali yuge, Jambu dvipe. So this is connected to the total. So there is, so in our, so we, in Western concept, the world is created only like 2000 3000 years back, right? That is what now scientists talk about, now millions of years. But other religious systems talk about very short span of creation. But in our nation and our culture and our literatures, we find that the creation is a cycle. It doesn't start, it's not linear. So time cannot start linearly, correct? Because if I say time started at this time, what was there before is a question you will ask. And that before also means there was time. So time cannot be starting in time. Therefore, it has, so, you know, it's a little difficult to understand. But what I'm trying to say is the whole creation is a cycle. And that cycle has huge set of years called kalpa. Within that there are manvantras. Within that there is a yuga. And then within the yuga, I am doing it in this particular place, in this particular continent. Like that, I actually relate myself to the whole whenever I do any of these religious rites. That means I am always looking at the whole. Where am I with reference to the totality? In what time, what am I doing, right? I am not an individual, but I am part of a whole. So that is always there. And this culture is uniform. Say, I just take one example, right? This across our nation, all this is uniform, right? Can you guess who is this Kashmiri Pandit? Some of you, very known person. I don't want you to answer, but in your mind, if I'll give you half a minute to think about who could this be. Okay. Okay, somebody has answered. So this is Jawaharlal Nehru. Okay. So even he had this Upanayana, and if you see Bengalis, Marathis, Odisha, Kerala, Andhra, and I can add on, right, in Tamil Nadu, everywhere, this custom is same. Almost see, it's all the same, right? So the whole nation from this, so there is this another thing, right? Is our country like, comprising of so many states, so many languages? What ties them all together? It is this culture, right? Whether, like I said, if you ask anybody all the way from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, where is God? The Hindu will always say the God is everywhere. Nobody will say he is sitting somewhere in heaven. Right? That is based on this vision, whether they understand this vision fully or not. But through Vriddha Vyavahara, we say, through this literature, through how people look at things, their fathers, how they looked at it, they also learned that the God is omnipresent. Culture also is common across this nation. The attitude is common. It's the same. I don't step on a newspaper, nor somebody in Kashmir does. Everybody sees knowledge as goddess only. Wealth is seen as goddess. You can have a different name, but eventually it is all the same, right? We say Mahamai, but they call us Mahamai. That's all. That is a difference. But the culture, the attitude is the same across the nation, right? And the other question that typically people ask, what are these devatas? Okay, what is God and what is devata, right? Because we say 33 crore devatas are there, no? Why do we need so many devata? You can just say these gods, Brahma, Vishnu is there enough, right? Before that, to understand that, right, you have to understand lot. I think I briefly touched upon it in the last session. Lot of things are given before we are born, right? Including this body is given to me, right? I didn't bring it from somewhere. My parentage is given. My upbringing is given, right? I am already brought, by the time I recognize who I am already into a system that is given to me. My intelligence and my capacity to think is given. So I cannot claim if I, score a great marks, it is not only due to me, right? The capacity is given. And then the feasibility, like somebody will say, hey, this laptops were human created, right? But then the possibility of creating a laptop is also given, right? Within the system, the nature. My culture is given. The time I was born is given, right? That's where the generation gap is depicted here, right? A lot of things are given to me, right? And I am part of a larger scheme of things. So within that, my own body, do I have complete control? Each one is a separate intelligence. My eye functions. I have capacity to open my eyelid. That's all, right? How my eye functions, I have no control, right? The eye has to see. That's it. My nose, my brain, my ears, each one has its own function. And if when I am sleeping, also my heart has to function, right? My lung has to function, and these are all involuntary. I don't consciously do it, otherwise I can't sleep. Now each one has its own intelligence in a way, correct? That's why it is functioning. So if I am one complete conscious person, there are also a lot of different intelligent parts in my system. I don't consciously manage each one of them. I don't consciously manage my kidney. I don't consciously manage my heart. I don't consciously manage my liver. These are all separate intelligent functions in my body. Isn't that true? I mean, you can link it to one person, but each one has to function on its own. That's why for each of this, we say it is being managed by one conscious entity, which we call as a devata. So when I have a problem with my nose, then I pray to a particular Devata because that function I see being managed by a separate intelligence, which I call as a particular Devata. My eyes, it is managed by a particular Devata. My ears are managed by that is where the Devatas come into play with reference to my individual body. Right? Varuna, Agni and all that. Similarly, let us look at Samashti. Samashti means the total. Again, there is a separate intelligence which is driving how rains happen, how the earth moves, how the Saturn moves, how the fire behaves, right? All that needs to have, there is an order in that. See, you can say it is nature and all that, but still there is a conscious order which is making it happen. Again, those are attribute, those conscious orders is what we call as Devatas. So when I have to have rain, and if I am not getting rain, I can always pray to one God, but we also have specific prayers towards just rain. So Indra, if is the deity for rain, then I can invoke Indra and pray to Indra so that I get rain. That is where Devatas. So because one body, it is one body, right? My body is only one. So I have one intelligence, but then each part is its own. Therefore, I have so many Devatas even though I am one person. Similarly, though there is only God, but each function on its own has its own intelligence. That's why we call each of them as a Devata. That's where Indra, Agni, Varuna, all these come into play. That's why in Hinduism, we say there are 33 crore. It's not about Hinduism having 33 crore gods. What we are saying is there are 33 crore individual functions in this creation which are independently managed. That means each one has its own conscious order, and therefore I invoke that particular deity or Devata if I need a specific benefit. So I can't have a general prayer for everything, right? Suppose in my school, my physics teacher, I need some help from on physics. You can always go to the headmaster and say, but eventually that headmaster has to tell the physics teacher to teach you, right? Or you can directly go to the physics teacher and ask that question. That is how the setup is, right? So the Devatas are for individual function, whereas we see the whole thing as one Ishvara. Okay. So let's see how much time we have. Huh? Okay. So I think we will cover the rest in the next thing. Any questions if you have, we can take. Let me just go to the chat window. Yeah. Spirit and God are within whatever concept a person believes should be. That's okay. There is no respect or disrespect. God, if it is a concept, okay, there is somebody, Spirit and God are within whatever concept of God a person believes should be respected without discrimination. That's fine. See, there is no lack of respect, but the question is, it's not about God. Like I said, we are not talking about God as a person here. We are trying to look at the truth of what is here. So when we are talking about truth of what is here, we have to be objective about what is there, right? So the respect is different. Trying to understand the truth is different. So that's what I would like to say. Is there any other question? What does invocation of God mean? Okay, I should have. I think I briefly touched upon it in the last session. So, like I said, God is everywhere, right? The God can hear what you, what you want to pray, but still, for me to relate, I need a particular form, correct? So because it is for me, I need to relate. I want to have an interaction because I want to, I need certain forms of interaction because I still need to relate because I need to relate as an individual to the total. That is where prayer comes. I didn't speak about it. We will talk at some point. There is a Manasam, Vachikam, Kayikam, 3 types of prayer we can do with just mind or with mind and speech, or with mind, speech and body all together. So we have all three forms of prayer. Now this is a form used to relate to the Lord, right? So in order for me to relate, I need to conceive that omnipresent Lord in a particular form. So that's why I invoke that omnipresence in this turmeric lump. I say, please come into this lump for me for some time so that I can actually perform a particular act of prayer to you. That is what is called invocation. That is, you are asking for its presence, is what is called invocation. Why Damaru denotes space? Okay. What is space? Space is the dimensional aspect. That is what is space. We are not talking ether or anything, right? So the gap between my two hands is the space. There is a dimensional thing, right? So now there is air in between, there could be, solid in between, there could be liquid in between, or there could be fire in between. But this in between is what is called space. So how do you denote an in between two things? Is by enclosing it. So Damaru encloses a dimensional aspect, right? That's why it denotes space. Second is space is also linked to the sound. Okay. So space has a quality attribute of sound. Therefore, Damaru being producing the sound, it is also denoting space. Okay. If there is any other question, I can answer. We can. Okay. Okay, looks like there was one question on Avatara. Okay, Avatara we can talk later, but typically Avataras are, while Lord can be omnipresent, the Lord also creates this Srishti, right? So whenever required, that omnipresent Lord can manifest as one particular form, is what is the idea of Avatara, and that is what is called Avatarati means while the omnipresent Lord can come down to one form. That's why it is called Avatara. Okay. Thank you. I think we covered all. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnadachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasichyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.
धन्यवाद।